Her spoiled sister was caught kissing her boyfriend a week before her own wedding, and what happened next shattered everything Emma thought she knew about love, loyalty, and family. It started with a strange feeling, something Emma couldn't explain. Zoe, her younger sister, had always been a bit much, loud, dramatic, and used to getting her way. But lately, it was different. She laughed too hard at Alex's jokes, touched his arm just a little too often, and always found a way to sit right beside him, even when there was space elsewhere. It was small at first, easy to ignore, but slowly, it started to eat at Emma. She tried to brush it off. Zoe was getting married in a week. Maybe she was just stressed and acting silly, but that didn't explain the way her eyes followed Alex, or the soft smile she gave him when she thought no one was looking. One evening during dinner, Zoe leaned into Alex, whispering something that made him chuckle under his breath. Emma's heart skipped. Something was wrong. That night, Emma finally asked him, "Do you think Zoe's acting weird around you?" Alex gave her a confused look. "Weird how? She keeps touching you, laughing too much. It just feels off." He laughed, brushing it off. "Zoe's always like that. You're overthinking it." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe she was just being paranoid. But the way Zoe looked at Alex didn't lie. Emma didn't know it yet, but the truth was coming. And it was worse than she could have imagined. The days leading up to Zoe's wedding were filled with family gatherings, but for Emma, each event felt heavier than the last. Every time the family came together, Zoe was there, always just a step too close to Alex. At the brunch their mother hosted, Zoe somehow ended up sitting right next to him, even though assigned seating placed her across the table. Emma watched as Zoe leaned in, giggled at things Alex said, and even rested her hand briefly on his shoulder when she stood up. It made Emma's skin crawl, but she stayed quiet. She didn't want to cause a scene. At a family barbecue 2 days later, things got worse. Emma was inside helping with drinks when she glanced out the kitchen window and saw Zoe and Alex standing alone near the edge of the garden. Everyone else was gathered around the grill, chatting and laughing, but those two were separated, faces too close for comfort. Emma watched as Zoe placed her hand on Alex's chest, and he didn't move away. He just stood there, talking, smiling, secretive. Emma's heart pounded. She walked outside pretending to be casual, making her way toward them slowly, hoping to catch the end of their conversation. But as soon as Zoe saw her coming, she stepped back quickly. Alex turned around like nothing had happened. "Hey babe," he said, grinning like everything was normal. Emma didn't smile back. "What were you guys talking about?" Zoe answered too fast. "Wedding stuff. I was just asking Alex for his opinion on the reception playlist." Emma looked at Alex. He nodded. "Yeah, just helping her with a few things." It didn't feel right. Emma knew Zoe well. She never asked for help, not with anything, especially not with wedding details. And why ask Alex? Why alone, away from everyone else? Emma kept quiet, but the tension followed her the rest of the night. Every time she turned around, Zoe was somewhere near Alex, reaching past him for a drink, brushing his arm as she passed, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. Emma stood by the fence with a plate in her hand and watched them like an outsider, her stomach twisting tighter with every passing moment. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell Zoe to back off, to tell Alex to stop entertaining her. But instead, she stood there, silent, hurting, and starting to feel like the third wheel in her own relationship. Emma couldn't take it anymore. After days of watching Zoe hover around Alex, touch him, whisper to him, and laugh like they shared a private joke, she decided to confront her sister directly. She texted Zoe and asked her to meet at their favorite cafe the next morning. It was the place they used to go as kids, back when things were simple and full of sisterly laughs. Now, it felt like neutral ground before a war. Zoe arrived late, wearing big sunglasses and a smug smile. "What's up?" she said, sipping her iced coffee like everything was perfectly fine. Emma didn't waste time. "I want to talk about you and Alex." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "What about us? You've been acting way too close to him, always around him, laughing at everything he says, touching him. I've seen it, Zoe. It's not just in my head." Zoe leaned back in her chair, her smile fading. "Are you serious right now?" "Yes, I'm serious," Emma replied, her voice low but firm. "You're getting married in a few days. Why are you all over my boyfriend?" Zoe let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "Wow, You sound insane. You're just insecure. I'm your sister, Emma. I was being friendly. If you're jealous, that's your issue, not mine. Insecure? Emma repeated, stunned. You think this is about me being jealous? I know what I saw, Zoe. Zoe rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic, as usual. Not everything is about you. Maybe if you trusted Alex more, you wouldn't be so paranoid. Emma's heart pounded. She couldn't believe Zoe was turning this around on her. I trusted both of you, but you've crossed a line. Zoe stood up suddenly, pushing her chair back with a screech. You know what? I don't have time for this. I'm planning a wedding, and I don't need your drama. Emma stood too, her voice rising. Then stop dragging my boyfriend into your wedding plans. People at nearby tables turned to look, but Zoe didn't care. She threw her napkin on the table, grabbed her bag, and stormed out of the cafe without another word. Emma stood there, staring at the door, her hands shaking. The worst part wasn't Zoe walking out. It was knowing her sister didn't even try to deny the closeness. She just blamed Emma and walked away like none of it mattered. After the fight at the cafe, everything changed. Zoe didn't call, didn't text. She completely shut Emma out. The silent treatment wasn't new for Zoe, but this time it was colder than ever. At family gatherings, Zoe barely looked at her. If she had to speak, it was short, fake, and forced. Emma tried to act normal, but the tension followed her everywhere like a shadow. Their parents noticed, of course, but they didn't ask questions. Instead, they made quiet comments that stung more than anything Zoe had said. Their mother whispered, Zoe has a lot on her plate right now. You shouldn't stress her more than necessary. Their father simply sighed whenever Emma tried to speak, like he was already tired of hearing her side of the story. At dinner one night, Emma tried to explain what had happened. She kept her voice calm. I just needed to set boundaries. She was getting too close to Alex. Their mother shook her head. Emma, your sister is about to get married. Of course she's emotional. You're overreacting. Her father added, Zoe says you accused her of trying to steal your boyfriend. That's a serious thing to say. I didn't accuse her, Emma said quickly. I told her how I felt. There's a difference. But no one listened. In their eyes, Emma was the troublemaker, the one ruining the peace right before the wedding. They saw Zoe as the stressed-out bride who just needed space and support. Then came the final blow. Alex. At first he seemed understanding, saying he'd stay out of the sisters' argument, but one night after dinner, as they were driving home, he finally spoke up. This thing with Zoe, it's making you act really paranoid, he said quietly. You're not being yourself lately. Emma's chest tightened. So, now you think I'm the problem too? Alex kept his eyes on the road. I just think you're making it a bigger deal than it is. Zoe's getting married. Maybe she was a little flirty, but that doesn't mean she's trying to steal me. Emma stared at him in disbelief. You don't see anything wrong with how she acted? He shrugged. I think you're reading too much into it. That night, Emma lay awake in bed, realizing how alone she truly felt. Her sister was ignoring her. Her parents had taken Zoe's side, and now even Alex, her own boyfriend, thought she was overreacting. The people she loved most were slipping away, and she didn't know why no one could see what she saw. It happened on a quiet afternoon, just 5 days before the wedding. Emma had gone to her parents' house to pick up a family photo album her mother wanted displayed at the reception. She wasn't planning to stay long. The house was mostly empty. Her parents had stepped out to run errands, and Emma assumed Zoe would be at her final dress fitting. She parked her car in the driveway and let herself in with her spare key. The house was silent, but as Emma walked through the hallway, something caught her attention. A soft laugh, muffled voices. They were coming from the back garden. She paused, then slowly, she stepped toward the sliding glass door that led to the patio. What she saw made her heart stop. There, under the large oak tree near the edge of the garden, were Zoe and Alex, wrapped in each other's arms like lovers in a movie. Alex was sitting on the garden bench, and Zoe was on his lap, her legs locked tightly around his waist. They were kissing, deep, desperate, and full of heat. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. A betrayal so clear it knocked the breath from Emma's chest. She froze. For a moment she couldn't speak, couldn't move. The world around her seemed to slow down. She stared at them, unable to believe what her eyes were showing her. Her own sister, her own boyfriend, right there, in their parents' garden, where they used to play as kids, where family barbecues were held, where Emma had imagined someday proposing to Alex. She finally stepped forward, the sound of the sliding door jolting them apart. Zoe gasped. Alex stood quickly, trying to push Zoe off his lap, but her arms were still around his neck. They both looked stunned, like children caught doing something forbidden. "Emma, wait!" Alex started, panic in his voice. Zoe stood up, hair messy, face flushed, and stammered, "It's not what it looks like." Emma's voice was sharp and shaking. "Don't! Just don't!" She turned and walked away, her feet barely touching the ground. Her hands trembled as she reached her car. She didn't cry, not yet. It was as if her body was still trying to catch up with her heart. Everything she had feared, everything she had doubted, had just unfolded before her eyes in the cruelest way possible. And now, there was no going back. Emma didn't even stop to think. Her heart was pounding, her vision blurry, but her hands were steady as she drove away from her parents' house. She didn't go home. She couldn't. That apartment held too many memories of Alex. The couch where they had laughed, the kitchen where they cooked together, the bed where she had once felt safe. All of it felt poisoned now. She pulled into a small hotel a few miles away and paid for 2 nights without blinking. The room was plain, with cream-colored walls and a stiff bed, but it felt like a quiet corner of the world where no one could reach her. As soon as she locked the door behind her, her knees gave out, and she collapsed onto the edge of the bed. The tears came fast, messy, and full of disbelief. It wasn't just the kiss. It was everything. The denial, the gaslighting, the way her family chose Zoe, and how Alex made her feel like she was imagining it all. She had trusted him with her heart, and he gave it to her sister. Wiping her face with the back of her hand, Emma reached for her phone. Her fingers hovered over Alex's contact for a moment, and then she began typing. "We're done. Don't contact me." She stared at the message for a second, then she hit send. Immediately after, she went to her settings and blocked his number. Then she blocked Zoe too. She didn't want to hear their excuses, or their apologies, or their lies. Not a single word. Not now. Maybe not ever. She sat back on the bed, her phone turned face down beside her. The silence in the room was thick, but for the first time in days, Emma didn't feel like she had to explain herself to anyone. No more defending what she saw. No more pretending everything was okay. The truth was ugly, but at least it was clear now. She ordered room service and took a long, hot shower, scrubbing her skin like she could wash away what she'd seen. When she finally lay down under the cold sheets, her body was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't rest. All she kept hearing was Zoe's voice. "You're just insecure," and Alex's shrug. "You're reading too much into it." But now, Emma knew she had seen everything exactly for what it was, and she had walked away. The next morning, Emma sat on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, still feeling hollow. The betrayal still stung like it had just happened. But beneath the pain, another thought began to creep in. Daniel, Zoe's fiancé, the man preparing to marry her in just a few days. He had no idea what kind of person he was about to commit his life to. Emma debated it for hours. Part of her wanted to stay silent, to walk away and let them figure it out on their own, but she couldn't. Daniel didn't deserve that. He was kind, respectful, and always treated Zoe like she was the most important person in the world. He deserved to know the truth before it was too late. With trembling hands, she dialed his number. It rang 3 times before he picked up. His voice was calm, as always. "Hey, Emma, everything okay?" She swallowed hard. "Hi, Daniel. No, it's not okay. I really didn't want to be the one to say this, but I think you need to hear it." There was silence on the other end. Emma took a deep breath. "I saw Zoe and Alex together yesterday in my parents' garden. They were kissing. Not a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing. It's been going on for a while, I think. But yesterday, it was clear." Still silence. Emma waited, unsure if he was processing or just didn't believe her. Finally, Daniel spoke, voice low and careful. "You're sure?" Emma closed her eyes. "I wish I wasn't. But yes, I saw it with my own eyes." He was quiet again. A long pause. Then softly he said, "I need to process this." "I understand," she replied, trying not to cry again. "I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me," he said quietly, before ending the call. Emma sat in the stillness of her hotel room, staring at the phone. There was no yelling, no questions, no breakdown. Just that calm voice saying he needed time. It was the most Daniel-like reaction she could imagine. Measured, thoughtful, heavy with emotion he didn't show. The days passed slowly. No one contacted. Not Daniel, not Zoe, not even her parents. Emma stayed off social media, unsure of what was happening behind the scenes. The wedding date loomed closer, just 2 days away now, and still, silence. But deep down, she had a feeling Daniel was not the kind of man to stay silent for long. The sun was shining, and the venue was decorated in soft whites and golds. Guests were seated, smiling, fanning themselves with programs as the ceremony was about to begin. Zoe stood at the end of the aisle, dressed in lace and pearls, beaming like the perfect bride. Her father stood beside her, ready to walk her down, but one person wasn't smiling. Daniel. He stood at the altar, his face unreadable, eyes fixed ahead, not even looking at Zoe. Emma wasn't there. She had stayed far away from it all. But her name was about to echo through every corner of that garden. As the ceremony began, the officiant welcomed everyone and gave the usual speech about love and commitment. Then came the vows. Zoe turned to Daniel, her voice light and dreamy as she began hers. She smiled up at him, not noticing the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched. When it was Daniel's turn, he looked at her. For a long, heavy moment, he didn't speak. Then he took a step back and pulled the mic closer. "I was going to marry you today," he said slowly, clearly. The crowd shifted, confused. "Because I thought I knew who you were. I believed you were honest, loyal, someone who loved with a whole heart." Zoe's smile dropped. "Daniel, what are you doing?" He didn't flinch. "But that was before I learned what you and Alex did to Emma." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Zoe's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I trusted you," Daniel said. "I planned a future with you. But instead of honoring our relationship, you betrayed your own sister. Emma saw you. She saw you kissing her boyfriend just 5 days ago." More gasps. Heads turned, whispering began. "She didn't deserve that," he continued, his voice firm. "And I won't marry someone who can hurt her own blood like that, and then lie about it." Zoe's face crumpled. "Daniel, please." He raised his hand, silencing her. "You made your choices, and now I'm making mine." He turned to the crowd. "I won't be continuing this wedding. I'm walking away, for my peace and for the woman who was brave enough to tell the truth." With that, he handed the mic back and walked off the altar, leaving Zoe frozen in place, her bouquet trembling in her hands. The perfect day had shattered, and Emma's truth had finally come to light. Emma was sipping tea in her hotel room, trying to keep her emotions steady, when her phone rang. It was Maya, her cousin. Emma hesitated for a second before answering. She wasn't sure if she was ready to hear what had happened, but something told her she needed to know. Maya didn't even say hello. Her voice was breathless, filled with shock. "Emma!" It was like something out of a movie. Emma's heart started racing. "What happened?" "Daniel stopped the wedding," Maya said. "Right in the middle of the vows. He exposed everything, told everyone about Zoe and Alex. He said your name, Emma, in front of everyone." Emma covered her mouth with her hand, not knowing whether to cry or breathe a sigh of relief. "Zoe just stood there," Maya continued. "At first, she looked confused, and then she broke down, started sobbing. She dropped her bouquet and collapsed onto the floor, right there at the altar. The guests didn't know where to look. Emma sat in stunned silence. She hadn't expected Daniel to go that far. She had only wanted him to know the truth, not to make a scene. But hearing that someone had finally stood up for her made her chest feel a little lighter. "What about the family?" Emma asked quietly. Maya sighed. "It's chaos, Emma. Pure chaos. Your parents were trying to calm Zoe, but they looked just as shocked as everyone else. Some people left right away. Others stayed and whispered like it was gossip hour. Mum said Uncle Paul tried to talk to Daniel, but he just walked straight out and didn't say a word." Emma closed her eyes. "I can't believe this is real. I had to call you," Maya said gently, "because I want you to know. Daniel didn't blame you. He called you brave. He made sure everyone knew you were the one who told the truth." A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. She didn't feel victorious, just relieved. "Thanks, Maya," she whispered. "No matter what they say," Maya said firmly, "you did the right thing." As the call ended, Emma sat in silence again. Her family might be torn, and her heart still healing, but for the first time in days, she didn't feel alone. Someone had finally stood beside her. The days that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. Emma stayed in her hotel room, avoiding the phone calls and messages that slowly began trickling in from family members, trying to make sense of everything. She didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. She felt vindicated. Daniel had believed her, had stood up for her in a way no one else did. The truth had come out in the open. She wasn't crazy, she wasn't imagining things, and she certainly wasn't insecure. But at the same time, Emma felt hollow. The people she loved the most, her sister and her boyfriend, had broken her in the most personal way. She hadn't heard a word from Zoe or Alex since the wedding. No apology, no message, nothing. And maybe that was for the best. Some relationships, no matter how close they once were, are not meant to survive betrayal. Emma took long walks in the evenings, trying to find herself again. Slowly, the weight began to lift. She started journaling, eating better, talking to Maya more often. It would take time, but she was healing. One afternoon, she wrote a single sentence in her notebook: "Always trust your instinct," because that was the one thing she had learned. Her gut had told her something was wrong, and it had been right all along. She only wished she had trusted herself sooner. Though the pain was still real, Emma knew she had chosen her dignity over silence, and in the end, that made all the difference. She folded the page, tucked it away, and finally allowed herself to smile. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had survived it, and she would never ignore her own voice again. Do you think Emma did the right thing by exposing the truth, even though it destroyed her relationship with her sister? Or should she have stayed silent to keep the family together? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd really love to hear your take on it. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.